Hello there everybody, so Button92 and welcome back to Tokyo Babel. Now then, I was informed that we are actually getting near the end of the story from what well, not so much end of the story, more like end of Raziel's route. So, originally my plan was to get this done in 2 more episodes, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that this time due to, well, lack of time. Such as, I think right now my limit is going to be only about maybe an hour tonight. So, let's just stop talking. Oh. There was a weird delay in loading. Lucifuge cast his gaze at the wormhole stretching across the sky. Bending the laws of space and time, its entrance connected directly to the realm of heaven. It was, however, a one-way tunnel. One could not reach heaven through it from this side. Lucifuge sat down as he muttered under his breath. His eyes now bled a currency none thought they ever had. Tears. I bet. No answer came. Astaroth, the millennia-old lord of demons, known as a crowned prince of hell, perished with a smile on his lips. He had grown weary. The realization pressed upon him like a boulder. During the countless years of Lucifuge's life, through hardship and anguish, this was the first time he had ever felt like this. The wormhole still endured, yet the angels who took notice of it would soon arrive. The angels began to swarm about the hole, their expressions twisted in madness as even their bodies began to undergo a horrific transformation. Holy shit! God, those are... Ugh! God, those are fucked up. Ugh! One had eyes like a caterpillar, another sprouted the wings of a moth, yet another had half of its body rotted away. One of them had another angel's head buried in his abdomen. Some angels found their mouths horribly deformed into monstrous cavities, while yet others mutated into man-sized wasps. Each and every one of them were abominations, which made Lucifuge's smile all the broader. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just say whoever designed this, hats off to you, good lord. The angels gnashed their teeth, biting into the demon's flesh. Ignoring the pain, Lucifuge carried on with his sneers. The angels swarmed Lucifuge, taking chunks out of his flesh with the bloodlust of piranhas. Good lord, I can only just imagine how that would actually look. Thank you for not showing that. The angels screamed in an odd, screeching tone. They appeared to be communicating in a language only they could understand, and it seemed like they had finally found the other angels and demons. Screech, screech. The angels that devoured Lucifuge all began to swarm that way. Cameel closed his eyes, discarding all feelings, all thoughts.
我々と連中の合計で4割を切るか切らないかというところですが。
So, 40% of their forces still remained.
残存する全兵力を集結させろ。
The angels, clearly at their collective wits' end, shook their heads as they looked to Cameel for an answer.
我々は死にますか。彼らがまだ死んでいない。希望は残されている。了解しました。そら、さっさと伝えに行け。
One after the other, the angels took to the air with the speed of bullets. Cameel let out a brief sigh as he reloaded his gun and sheathed his blade. They might indeed perish, either in battle or from madness. Though the means might have been different, the end remained the same, the complete extinction of their consciousness. But that was all right. Let it end like that. Fear gripped his heart like a frigid steel gauntlet, yet having savored it like this, Cameel, for the first time in his life, had finally come to understand how mortals felt. Their lives are fragile beyond measure, frail enough to succumb to the tempting whispers of demon kind, and that very quality made them love mankind. Yet that was but the arrogant, self-indulgent love of those in power. In his present weakness, Cameel had finally understood it. Mankind required no such love. They needed no overprotective guardians to watch over them. Adam and Eve, following their exile from paradise, were content with that. All we should have done was give them a gentle push forward, to help them carve their own path, to make them stand on their own feet. Cameel began to understand why Michael never showed much interest in mankind. Leaving the confines of his devastated student council room, Cameel stepped onto the school hallway to regroup with a number of familiar faces.
カマエル様に力尽きるまでお供します。
我が命は、我が魂はあなたと共に。どうかご命令を。
The chorus of joy sang by the maddened angels reverberated across the hallway. It was hard to tell how much time they had left, but
人間は避難させているな。はい、全員アストラル化して保管してあります。保管場所が我々の最終防衛ラインだ。壊れた天使たちがそこを嗅ぎつける前に殲滅する。はっ！我々は死ぬ瞬間まで人類を守護する役割を果たす。それが我々に与えられたレゾンデートルだ。
this was it. Death meant the end, permanently. And with that, Cameel realized that he now stood on equal footing with mortals. It filled him with joy. After a deep breath, Cameel sealed his comrade's fate.
命令する。敵対するすべてのものを打ち倒し、そして死ね。
By the time we had reached the first stratum of Ginza, we managed to shake all would-be pursuers. We would soon remove the same external plate and attempt to take a shortcut back to the 6th stratum.
あら、あなたたちあのデカブツに会ったの？
Oh yeah, he seemed like a pretty cool guy, actually.
あったけど、
元気してた。
まあ元気そうではあった。
Lilith gleefully chirped a series of quick phrases along the lines of, "Oh, I see, that's good to hear, yep," before leaping outside.
ちょっと天道刹那くん、ご確認したいのですが。
What's up?
何？
ここ、くぐつサラミにはちょっとばかり厳しい気がするんですが。
I shot an understanding glance at the opened wall.
高所恐怖症？
じゃなくても怖いよここ。
心配しなくても、ラジエルが重力操作するから大丈夫。
いや、それにしてもこう。
Taking a firm hold of the inner side of the opening, Stormy carefully peeked outside, then let out a brief shriek.
無理無理無理無理、絶対に無理ですこれ。しょうがないわね。しっかり捕まってなさい。
And just like that, Lilith lifted Stormy up.
お姫様抱っこ。ただし抱え上げているのは王子様ではなく女悪魔とは。聖母マリアならぬ魔女リリスが見ているわよ。上位互換
After shooting a sideways glance at Sormi and Lilith's harmless nonsense, I stepped outside.
二人とも優しいよね。
何が？
気にしないでくれて。
僕には忘れているんじゃないかって気がするけど。
Raziel gently giggled to herself.
そうかも。行こう。天の国へ。かつての楽園へ。
Yeah, paradise. That's certainly a word for it.
了解。すべてを終わらせに行こう。
Basically, all we gotta do is kill Adam and Eve, right? That'll be easy. Wait. No, it won't. Nodding, I took a firm step ahead. Starting from the first stratum, we swiftly made our way to the second. I ran as fast as the wind right across the endless walls of Tokyo Babel. The third stratum, the fourth, the fifth.
ねえねえ、リヴァイアさんってどんな人？
Levy, what? Sormi, I have a feeling you're not pronouncing his name correctly.
巨大な蛇。
巨大ってどのくらい？
There he is! A second later, there was a column of water towering above us, stretching over a 5-kilometer radius.
空間属性強化。空気レベル1。
Raziel hastily tapped into her air magic to erect a protective umbrella. This was no rain, though. The incoming body of water splashed against her barrier with the power of a waterfall.
おいこれでかエビ出てくるときはそっと出てこんかい
He's gotta make a dramatic entrance, you can't blame him.
すまんすまんで人間よどれくらい巨大かというとこの程度巨大なわけだ
You must have heard our conversation.
でかい。ビルにしか見えない。
天国に行く気かむしら
うん。今なら向き合える気がする。
なにいざとなったらしらばっくれればいいのさそんなこと知ったこっちゃねえってなわしならそうするさ
あなた意外にいいこと言うわね
After a few moments of hesitation, Raziel's expression melted into a smile.
いざっていう時はそうしちゃう。
もはやわしにできることは何もない図体がでかいだけの年寄りじゃからな
リヴァイアさん、私たちが何とかするからそれまでは死なないでね。
おう
I don't know, I don't think there's really any angels coming his way, I think. Once Leviathan had returned to below the waves once more, we continued onwards to the 6th stratum. Our journey upward was fraught with winds fierce enough to freeze us to the very core. Beyond two skies lay the kingdom of heaven, and we had almost reached it.
プレートの場所は確か。
We stopped for a moment, then continued onwards at a leisurely pace. Raziel managed to recall the exact coordinates.
第六階層は神田だったの
そう。私の方はここに片方だけ残されていた。
ちなみに支配者は誰だったの
神の炎、ウリエル。彼は僕が倒した。
ああ、ウリエルだったか。じゃあ、それみ、第七階層への道を探してちょうだい。
Oh boy, we're going to see that weird chorus again.
見つけた
Well, shit, that was quick. Sormi waved in our direction, pointing out the exact location of the entrance.
早っ時間がかかればかかるほど精神に負担もかかるし、いいことだと思っておきますか
Really? Huh.
そうだな。
Something felt out of
空見
place.
頭は大丈夫か？
私の知能指数的な何かにご不満があるのですか？
No?
いや、そうじゃない。声が聞こえたりしないのか？
あれ？声しないね。
Really? Exactly. The echo of that vile, aggravating chorus had died down in my ears as well. Really? I could count myself lucky. Yet, now that something that had always haunted my mind was gone, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. However, I had no time for such concerns. All I needed to focus on at present was the climb upwards. That's weird. Why did the chorus stop?
行こうみんな
Is it because all the angels are kind of out? All three of us nodded in agreement. We had finally entered the gates leading to the 7th stratum. Strangely enough, the chorus remained silent even as we entered. What?
ここは分かりやすいな
I'm guessing it has something to do with the angels are kind of, you know, leaving heaven right now.
ああ、あの建物、見覚えある見覚えある。新宿
みたいね
The 7th stratum belonged to the district of Shinjuku, an amalgamation of mortal desires. Oddly enough, none of the unpleasant chill I would feel in the presence of a master was assailing my senses. The skies, however, emanated an ominous purple glow.
さてと空見どうかしら
Sormi surveyed her surroundings and pointed in 2 directions.
新宿都庁方面に一つ何かある。で、もう一つ歌舞伎町に何かあったのかも。
天国への階段ヤコブのはしごがあるとすればまず高い場所だけど歌舞伎町に何かあるっていうのも気になるわね
ならば歌舞伎町に向かった方がいいだろう大して時間もかからないだろうし
そうじゃあお任せするわ先導よろしく
I was expecting that to suddenly just kind of give me an option to choose between either one, but okay, I'm kind of glad I didn't. Mustering a half smile at Lilith's words, I promptly took to the skies and headed for Kabukicho. Even within Shinjuku, the place that stood out the most as a haven for human desires was Kabukicho. Few other places existed even in Japan that catered so openly to carnal desire. Oh, kind of like a red light district, I see. The place was a veritable den of corruption, tainted to its very core, which in turn could even lend it a sense of immaculate beauty. Yet the people who bore that same beauty were nowhere to be seen. To those familiar with the place, that fact alone would elicit shock. Kabukicho, the district that never slept, was now thoroughly bereft of people. We reached the central square and beheld the object that Sormi's eyes led us to. Oh, these two! Their backs had turned to steel and melted into each other, their bodies sporting twin heads that resembled Janus, the two-headed Roman god, or perhaps the well-known two-faced Sukuna from Japanese folklore. Raziel began to visibly tremble. Whatever the case might have been, I could say one thing for certain. They were already dead, completely drained of magical energy. A more visible reason for their demise, however, was... Durandal? We were at a loss for words. The massive blade had been buried clean into Gabriel's heart, exiting through his back to impale Raphael's abdomen. Sormi must have noticed the abrupt change in our expressions. She restlessly glanced at both of us, trying to get an answer.
ユランダルはかつて大天使ガブリエルが人に与えた聖剣だ
A brilliant, dentless sword that would yield to nothing. Gabriel gave it to a certain French knight, whose quest for honor and glory led him to refuse reinforcements, thus landing him in an early grave. Of course, the blade itself was by no means responsible for his death. However, the knight's conviction that he had been chosen by the blade may or may not have clouded his judgment, effectively influencing his decision to deny reinforcements. A brilliant divine blade that, in some sense, ended up becoming a cursed instrument of doom. Following the knight's death, the sword was handed down to the king, and was said to have ultimately been recovered by Gabriel. The very pinnacle of mankind, created by the angels themselves. I had heard that the angels granted him all the sacred artifacts in their possession. Kind of a bad decision, honestly.
アダムが第7階層にたどり着いているということは 天国の扉に向かったのでしょうね。
そんなにすごい剣なのに抜かずに行っちゃったの？
抜いてみるか。
Yeah, I'm not seeing the sword. I hopped atop Gabriel's knee and took a firm hold of the sword's golden handle. The blade seemed to be lodged inside their bodies quite firmly, but I figured I could pull it out with all my strength. No, it must be a very, very small blade. Well, actually, they're obviously colossal in size, of course. After nodding back at Lilith, I poured more strength into my grip.
待って、やめた方がいいかも。
What do you mean? Raziel's words gave me pause.
どうして？
なんとなく。
A callous look in her eyes, Raziel walked up to Raziel and gently placed her palm upon the angel's belly. I hesitated a few heartbeats, but realized this blade would most likely not be superior to my own raison d'are. I had no need for it. Besides, its holy steel would only be granted to a mortal chosen and accepted by the angels, and my savior happened to be a demoness. Still, I couldn't help but wonder.
いや、なんでも。
Could I mature into your knight in shining armor? I found myself wrestling with that thought, but ultimately decided not to voice it.
ラジエル、結局この二人はガブリエルとラファエルでいいのよね。
Most certainly.
二人は紛れもなく四大天使のガブリエルとラファエル。それは間違いない。肌が鋼鉄化している理由はわからないけれど、自分でやったんだと思う。
And then Adam proceeded to impale them with the blade. Raziel voiced her opinion in a very matter-of-fact way.
それ自殺ってこと？
違う。自殺というよりはどちらかというと殉教なのだと思う。
何かのためにその身を捧げた。
Raziel nodded. What goal could have been so grand that two of the four master angels had sacrificed themselves in order to accomplish it? I could detect no traces of magic from them. All that towered above us was a corpse.
行こう。ここにはもう何もない。
Even if there was, we were far too late.
わかった。さよなら、ガブリエル、ラファエル。
With a hue of regret lingering in her gaze, Raziel finally pulled herself away from the two angels. Afterwards, we headed for the other landmark pointed out by Sormi, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building. Lilith's voice calmed to a whisper as she eyeballed our destination, the building's helipad.
こっちも痕跡が残っているだけね。やっぱりアダムとイブがやってきたのかしら。
じゃあ、もしかして万事解決しちゃってたりして。
Sormi, they're the one that... never mind.
とはならないだろうね。
That would be far too convenient. Furthermore, I felt convinced that things wouldn't simply end like
見
that.
つけた。ヤコブのはしご。あ、本当だ。
Raziel's feet softly touched the helipad surface as she landed. A moment later, the very clouds parted. And once again, we see Jacob's ladder. Whoa! This must have been Jacob's ladder. A stairway cloaked in dazzling light, its steps piercing the clouds as they ascended to the heavens above. It felt almost like a spider's thin thread, dangled from above to aid a thief in his escape. Both Sormi and I gazed in awe at its otherworldly visage. Lilith and Raziel seemed far less moved, considering this most likely wasn't the first time they beheld Jacob's ladder. All I could read in their gazes was a tinge of nostalgia at seeing its steps again. The stairwell itself was wide enough to accommodate two people ascending it side by side. We decided that Raziel and I would take point, with Lilith and Sormi trailing a step behind. Lilith took a firm hold of Sormi's arm to make sure she wouldn't slip and fall.
大丈夫だってば。
いや、私は確信している。あなた絶 対に下を覗き込むから。そんで絶対クラッと来て階段から落ちかけるから。
Yeah, I can see Sormi doing that. Raziel cast a pensive look at the stairwell. Just to be on the safe side, I decided to take her hand.
ありがとう。
We needed to look out for each other, so we wouldn't fall, in both senses of the word. In a world such as ours, bereft of God, we had but our sanity to cling to, and I would not fall. I would not succumb to madness.
行こう。
We took a first, determined step. It felt peculiar somehow, a part of my brain associating the sensation with fresh soil, another with hard concrete. And as we did, a feeling of complete isolation overcame me, as if the four of us here were the only people left in this universe. And so we began our climb, or should I say, ascent. As we made our way up the stairway to heaven, we felt neither fatigue nor hunger or corruption.
空って高いな。
I had stated the obvious. Raziel nodded, then glanced backwards and down at the landscape below. Or at least she would have, had any trace of it been visible from this high up. All that happened to us began to feel like events of a distant path, coupled with a conviction that reaching the top of this stairwell would bring an end to it all. But that couldn't be farther from the truth, for climbing to the top meant only the beginning of the end, a final trial awaiting us. And we would fight. That's what I had decided, that no matter the opponent, I would emerge victorious. That I would make the impossible possible, transcending overwhelming odds, meeting the tyranny of madness with power enough to cast it into nihility. I had decided this out of my own free will, and I wouldn't let anyone stand in the way of that conviction of mine, not even my very own weakness. After a climb that felt like an eternity, we had finally entered a blanket of clouds. Once we had made it through what felt like an oversized mass of cotton candy, we beheld a massive gate glittering in the rays of the sun. It was a massive gate of white stone, both divine and eerily terrifying at the same time. A gate leading to heaven. In other words, the boundary separating angels from mortals. Raziel gazed up at its towering enormity, narrowing her eyes.
変わってない。何も変わってない。なのに
変よね。いつから天国はおぞましいなんて感覚を抱くような場所になったのかしら。
あれ、この門開いてない。
Sormi was right, though we couldn't make out anything through the thin opening.
本当にアダムが到達したみたいね。開けないといえば開けないのかしら。
Considering the hundreds of lives sacrificed for the sake of this moment, I couldn't help but agree. But at the same time, this gate was but the beginning. Freeing my mind of obstructive thoughts, I walked up to its colossal doors and pushed. The gate opened without as much as a creak, granting us entry to the world beyond, to the kingdom of heaven. And it's about as blood-soaked as I probably remember, I assume. Yep.
あら、
We beheld a paradise reeking of blood. Angels and humans as far as the eye could see, all impaled on stakes while burning alive. They writhed in agony like insects, and they would most likely continue to do so for an eternity. Echoes of unbridled joy and religious ecstasy mingled in the flames, the tormented and impaled reveling in their very own suffering.
吐きそう。
You and me, both. Sormi's comment felt all too appropriate.
これが天国。私たちが安寧に暮らしていた楽園。
Raziel started forward, her gaze pure ice.
ラジエル、どこに行くの？
セファーラジエルの残りを探す。
場所の心当たりでもあるの？
天使たちが集う議事堂。私はあの場所であの本を解き放ってしまったんだ。
ラジエル、記憶が蘇ったのか？
完全じゃない。ただわ したことだけは覚えている。
She continued onwards, her steps no steadier than before. I quickened my pace to catch up to her as Lilith and Stormy trailed closely behind.
なきゃ。私は恐ろしくなって逃げ出したあの場所へ戻らなきゃいけない。
Raziel would need to reclaim the book and the memories she had once forsaken here in heaven.
行こう。
The whole of heaven had turned into a field of carnage, yet not once were we set upon and attacked. Only the angels resided here, all their minds drowned in ecstatic torment. Color drained from Stormy's cheeks as she threw up several times, but that was it. The whispers of mental contamination had all but died down. Ugh. All that remained here was a heaven bereft of life, thoroughly abandoned. Corpses littered the fields all around us, rotten and discarded like scraps of garbage. The place was completely empty, devoid of even heaps of trash and rubble. As a result, it felt a mere shadow of its former self. The very air seemed to freeze as I pushed the assembly hall's door open. The heavy stench of blood, a clear indication that something had transpired here. Raziel rushed forward in a straight line with the rest of us scrambling into the room behind her.
本会議場、あの場所に、あの場所で、私はあの場所で何か訴えた。
She leapt into the assembly room as if driven by a zealous fervor. We followed her in and instantly realized where the heavy scent of blood was coming from. We came upon a great number of angels, all with their expressions twisted, contorted in terror. All dead. The reason they had not decayed despite the passing of time lay in the simple fact that we were in heaven. Did they perish in battle, or chose death to escape despair? Whatever the case may have been, their death was the extremity of madness. Raziel dared not even look at them, instead hugging the book she found on the altar. It was the other highly compressed volume of her sacred tome, the one she had spent millennia searching for, the Sefer Raziel's Book of Heavens. After combining the two volumes, Raziel embraced the tome, holding it tight in her arms. Yet her expression was colored not by joy, but a hue of melancholy.
私が教えたのは概念。天使たちが言葉を知りつつも理解することを忌避していたもの。
Eternity.
待ってラジェル。
Lilith's uncharacteristically flustered voice silenced Raziel. The demoness now looked even paler than Sormi. Raziel gave her an apologetic glance.
ごめん。リリスは向こうに行った方がいいかも。詳細を説明しなくても無意識下で伝達させて完成する可能性がある。
そうね。そうさせてもらうわ。議事堂の外に出てるから。
Lilith strode out of the room, leaving only the three of us inside.
リリスも何か関係あるの？あるといえばある。彼女も悪魔。人間とは隔絶された存在。だからこれに感染する可能性がある。
Corrupted by a concept? I couldn't quite figure out what Raziel had meant. After taking in a lungful of air, she went on.
私が伝えた概念は永遠。それがこの震災すべての起点になった。
Sormi and I remained silent for a few moments, not necessarily out of shock, but rather confusion.
どういうこと？永遠って単語が危険なの？
Raziel shook her head.
違う。危険なのは永遠という単語の意味ではない。それなら誰だってわかっている。天使たちが忌避していたのは永遠という概念を理解すること。
Both angels and demons, to be precise. They were born at the dawn of the universe, their lives eternal.
わかりやすく言うと、時間の感覚。私たち天使にとっては1000年前も2000年前もさほど変わりがない。人間にとって1時間前と2時間前が変わらないように。だけど私たちは基本的に永遠を生きるもの。 たとえ何かの拍子に死んだとしても、天国に魂が流れ着いてそのままよみがえる。私たちは基本的に死から最も遠い位置にある。だけど私は知ってしまった。人間の刹那と空見ならわかるでしょう。永遠を生きるというのは死ぬほど絶望的であると。
That's why I can't really understand people who want to be immortal. Like, that's kind of dumb. I mean, wanting to be immortal. That's what I was saying was dumb. I'm gonna shut up now. Oh, never mind. Sormi's gaze darted in my direction, pleading for assistance.
空見、君の考えている永遠は多分天使たちがこれまで味わってきた永遠だと思うよ。ラジエルが言ってる永遠は牢獄の永遠だ。
Their lives would be exactly the same a second and 1,000 years from now on. Their duties and the result would change not one bit. It was merely their perception of time that differed from ours, overwhelmingly so. Their minds could not take it. A dreadful shiver rushed across Sormi's body as understanding dawned on her. Death was a terrifying thing and often the source of great pain and anguish. But at times, death's embrace could be seen as relief. A person suffering from terminal cancer might view every moment of their life as another second of hellish torment, and they would wish to escape it. To them, death would bring salvation. Yet even if they died 100 or 1,000, a million times, they could not truly die. Such was the meaning of eternity. Many sought eternal life and youth over the course of history, yet all they truly desired was simply to become immortal and unaging. Could they truly have endured a life lasting hundreds or even thousands of years while still retaining a mortal's perception of time? In the case of angels and demons, the concept of eternity had been wiped clean from their minds in order to protect their sanity. As long as they remained ignorant to the true meaning of eternity, a day or 1,000 years made little difference. At best, they would feel a hint of nostalgia at days gone by. And even if they carried on living for 1,000 years, it would mean nothing to them. And Raziel ended up shattering that safeguard to pieces. Eternity was terror incarnate, a fate worse than death. Having awakened to that knowledge, it was small wonder the angels succumbed to madness.
そっか、変な例えだけど、つまらない授業をずっと続けている気分なのかな。
I think yours is the weird analogy.
案外近いかもね。
Oh, never mind. In fact, it was perfectly accurate. Even with their newfound understanding of eternity, the angels would not be allowed to abandon their duties. Even if the class in question was soul-crushingly boring, they had to endure it. Their eyes had opened to the future, a tomorrow that would bind them forever. The future held no hope. There would be no end to their lives, ever.
私はどうしてか、それを天使たちに伝えなければという思いに駆り立てられた。だから、この議事堂で。
I bet you it was the fake Samuel. She brushed her hands against her own body, as if caressing a lover.
この本を使って永遠という概念を完全に説明した。
Yeesh.
それで天使たちが壊れた。
Raziel looked at us with a hollow expression, shaking her head in a way that gave no specific answer.
わからない。ただ、それからすぐにコーラスと共に天使たちが殺し合いを始めた。気づけば私はパンドラにいた。一度は取り戻した本のことすら覚えてないまま。ただ気づけば全てが変わり果てていた。
Raziel crouched down, never once letting go of her book.
私のせいだ。
Aww.
この震災は全て私の責任だ。
Christ, that is a huge book! I walked up to Raziel and wrapped my arms around her shoulder as her body began to be shaken by a series of violent sobs. Sormi looked at us with an expression that ached to ask a question or two. I too had my own doubts.
ラジエル、ラジエル。 いいから落ち着け。
The words came out as more of a command. Either way, I held Raziel tight in my embrace. We wouldn't be getting anywhere unless she calmed down.
大胆。
私は落ち着いている。
どこがだ。君の話はいろいろと穴がありすぎる。
あ、うん。それは私もそう思った。
Raziel's eyes darted between me and Sormi. She seemed in utter disbelief that her words would be
一つ
questioned.
目、永遠の概念を教えたのがラジエルだとして、君は誰から教えられたんだ。
Ah, there we go.
それは本から。
Somebody must have recorded it in the book, other than her.
本を書いたのは君だろ。
私は本を書いた時の記憶がない。いつ書いたのか、どうやって書いたのか。
I think someone else added it. In order to shield her mind from collapsing under the sheer weight of knowledge and truth, she wrote the book in a trance-like state.
では、その知識が誤っていたりしてもわからない。
違う。なぜなら私は神の秘密という名を冠するもの。私の本は神から絶対的な正しさを保証されている。
じゃあそうしておくことにしよう。もう一つの疑問。わからないって言っていたけど、どうしてラジエルは他の天使たちにそれを伝えようとした？
大切なことだと思ったから。
大切なこと？
天使たちは人間を導くのが仕事だからこそ、人間が悩み苦しむ永遠という概念を理解しなくてはと。
それは君の考えで正しい。
Raziel blinked back at me in complete
お
surprise.
かしいと思っていた。君の告白は確かに正しいのかもしれない。でもそれだとどうしても一点辻褄が合わなくなる。
何？
確かに人間にとって永遠は苦しいものだ。でも基本的に人間は永遠に生きることなどない。永遠という言葉そのものが虚偽に等しいんだ。
Was it not strange? People do sometimes experience suffering that's akin to an eternity, but not eternity itself. Whatever they experienced, it would all eventually come to an end. Even the Flying Dutchman was ultimately liberated from its
だから
curse.
人間の永遠を理解しようとしたその行為は絶対におかしい。何しろ意味がない。
To mortals, eternity only meant like an eternity. Raziel glanced back at me, mouth agape, expression clouded by dread.
でもだったらどうして私は。
You were manipulated.
そう、それが最後の鍵だ。ラジエル、君はその奇妙に歪んだ永遠という概念を誰に教えられた？
Setsuna's words shook my mind like an explosion. I stood in front of the throne of God. Naturally, the throne itself was empty, surrounded at all angels by a curtain. Angles, fuck. God could not be perceived by the five senses. Even his voice felt like an echo transmitted directly to our minds from a distant dimension. On that day, God spoke unto me, asking me to define eternity. And so I answered.
永遠とは。
God received my answer, then replied, Nay. God's negation took me by shock. Was there more to the meaning of eternity than what the word itself carried? It is a concept. We have to live for an eternity. As an angel, you must comprehend what that truly means. And live in fear of it. I felt a horrible sensation crawl its way up my spine. Comprehend. And all of anguish, terror, solitude. Solitude. Solitude, 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 solitude. Agony washed over my mind in waves, hatred and despair surging violently to the surface, causing me to vomit. The pain, akin to having my very brain fried, sent me to my knees. I recalled what happened next.
Go now, and convey this to all my children.
Obeying God's command, I left the confines of the curtain, all the while cradling my book in one hand. I would make for the great assembly hall, no doubt bustling with angels. I had to convey God's word to them. I needed to share what God had told me. With the madness God had imparted me with, I soared towards the assembly hall at full speed. I must have been smiling, knowing I had no choice but to convey this important revelation to them. Eternity. Ah, cruel, wretched eternity. The concept of utter terror and despair. I had to convey it to all angels of heaven. And the result was the assembly hall massacre. Did God predict this outcome? Did God desire for this to happen? No. No. That couldn't be. There's something far more fundamental. I reached a conclusion I never should have.
Yes! We must kill God.
Had God's mind been claimed by madness? Was that truly the case? Without even the time to consider that terrifying revelation, I realized that I had begun to go mad, much like the other angels. Unlike them, however, I managed to endure the mental contamination for a long time. I most likely jotted down the concept of that wretchedly twisted eternity to the pages of the Sefer Raziel. And by doing that, I gained some level of resistance against the concept. After realizing I needed to fragment my own memories, I promptly carried it out. I lingered aimlessly atop the blood-stained fields of heaven, having cast aside both my memories and the Sefer Raziel, when suddenly... Cameel helped me escape, and that took us to the present. Had creation not all begun with him? Had not the Lord's word been the one to breathe life into the cosmos?
Fuck you, God!
でも絶対にそれだけはあってはならない。これは絶対のタブー。世界が滅んだ方がまだマシな真実。あのお方が狂えたなんて。そんなことありえない。
Are we sure this is Tokyo Babel? Because now it's starting to feel like a Shin Megami Tensei game. The hollow echo of Raziel's cries reverberated across the assembly hall. God was the ultimate being for angels, in fact, even for demons. Her words carried the highest form of taboo against such a being, the revelation that the very creator of this universe had gone mad. And who could blame her for barely being able to believe it? If God had truly gone mad, what were they to do? They could no longer pray to God for help, for no one would listen. And if the target of their prayers had his mind consumed by insanity, what were the angels to do?
でも怪しいよね。
What caused God to go mad? Sarmi made her comment in a very casual way.
確かにそうだな。
絶対怪しいよ。そりゃ神様だからショックなのはわかるけどさ。でも神様だからって狂わないって保証はあるの？
Raziel nearly flew into a rage, but immediately held herself back, her expression changing from anger to one of shame.
ほら、今私ちょっと意地悪なこと言ったけど、ラジエル怒ったでしょ？それが私、聖書はあんまり詳しくないけどさ、神様だって怒ったりするでしょ？
Yes, the Bible has pointed that out many a time. Uriel himself was a manifestation of God's divine wrath.
怒るんだったら喜ぶことだってあるでしょ？嘆くことがあるなら壊れることだってある。そんなことは。
Think about it, Raziel. I recalled exactly what I myself used to be.
切な。
本当の神といえども逆らえないものが一つある。
そんなのない。
ある。自分自身だ。神は神であるという呪縛から絶対に逃れることはできない。
As such, God too could go insane. As God had declared himself omnipotent and all-powerful, he could very much succumb to madness as well. The potential was there. For God knew the whole of the cosmos. He knew anger, sorrow, grief, and bliss. He could feel the chill of despair, the warmth of hope. he knew everything. And in his omnipotence, God had no doubt sealed away his comprehension of one single thing: the concept of eternity, much like in the case of the angels. And in the Lord's case, the torment of eternity might have run far deeper. An omnipotent God was a being far removed from death. Even if the universe itself crumbled, he would continue to exist.
神であるがゆえ
自身壊したのかもしれない。
Raziel, after a few brief moments of hesitation, hurled aside the book she'd been cradling. The Sefer Raziel she had searched for all this time.
ラジエル、
空間属性追加ソロネ
What? She was planning to reduce the book she devoted her entire life to mere
よ
ashes.
せ。
I managed to act in time to stop her. Raziel cut off her magical flow, extinguishing the flames.
大丈夫？どいて、その本は燃やさなきゃ。その本から何もかもが始まってしまった。書いてはいけない本だった。
よせと言っただろう。違うよ、ラジエル。それは君のレゾンデートルをも否定することになる。
Raziel's race on dare was to record. Abandoning that duty would be casting aside the very meaning of her existence. A complete denial of her entire life up to this point.
記録は悪ではない。凶悪な兵器でもない。記録はただこうだったという事実の羅列に過ぎない。だからこそ重要なんだ。
私はそんなの考えたこともない。
いいや、あるはずだ。ラジエル、君は人間の歴史を綴った。天使たちの歴史を綴った。この世界の全てを書き留め続けた。後の人間はそれを見て思うのだ。失敗は繰り返さない。成功を見習おうと。
Men set their very souls to writing. They would record and leave traces of themselves behind for future generations. Even if, at times, the message would be distorted, this was nonetheless the duty of man, a race celebrating its own brief lifespan, so that their children would follow the right path once they were gone.
記録の過ちは正さねばならない。だけど、記録そのものを排除しては決してならない。
Raziel's shoulders slumped as I went over to pick up the book, handing it back to
こ
her.
の本は君が途方もない時間をかけて綴ったものだ。苦心惨憺しながら君はこの本を書いたのだろう。生涯をかけてただ一冊の本を。
The sheer enormity of her efforts, however, would never be known to the reader. Those who study records might find themselves moved by what they read, but not by the chronicler herself. Especially if said chronicler was an angel. The weight of her actions might not have been truly comprehended by anyone. She would never be praised for her work. Her presence would never be felt between the lines. Yet Raziel still kept writing, recording.
それは誰かの役に立ちたいとそう思ったからじゃないのか。誰かがこの記録で希望を持ち絶望を踏破してほしいと思ったからじゃないのか。
Raziel cast a brief glance at the book she had been holding.
私はただ記録したかっただけで、伸ばせる相手のことなんてどうでもいいって。アダムに本を渡した時、欲しいとすら思わなかった。
She kept on writing and writing, hoping her book would grant mankind hope, that it would aid them in their time of need. Every word she wrote had been set to paper with that conviction in her heart. The entire reason she searched for her book was so that it could fall into the hands of the right people.
でも、この本は
Her book was most certainly a part of the reason the angels succumbed to madness upon learning of the concept of eternity.
書き直せばいいんだよ。記録は正されるべきだ。修正して正しいものにすればいい。
私のやってきたことは間違いじゃない。
やったことが過ちでもやってきたことは絶対に間違いじゃない。君がいなければ人間はずっと大地で右往左往している存在に過ぎなかった。その本は しっかりと握りしめた方がいい。君の夢、君の希望なんだから。もう人間にとってこの本の知識が必要ないと思うのなら、君の宝物にすればいい。
Sorry. Where the hell is Adam in all this? I believed she had that right. This was the tome she had spent her life penning.
そうする。
Raziel lovingly hugged the book close to her chest.
帰り、私の方。お疲れ様。後であなたの間違いを正してあげるから。今は少しだけ我慢して。
And with that, she tucked the book back into her pocket dimension, then turned back to us with a bright, refreshed expression.
この先に神の玉座がある。もしあのお方がまだいらっしゃるとしたら、そこ以外に考えられない。
よし、じゃあ全員で戻ろう。リリスが待ちくたびれているところだろうし。
Yeah, she's been awfully quiet. We didn't have all the pieces of the puzzle just yet, but at the moment we needed nothing else. So we would press on, to gain an audience with God, not to pray to Him, nor to beg for His help or forgiveness. I merely wished to know the truth. I wished to question God, to ask Him, O revered Lord, has your mind surrendered to the darkness of insanity? And that is where I'm going to end it. Because I'm going to assume that the next episode, the next recording is probably going to be the end of Raziel's route. It depends. Mostly if I've actually even got time to even go through it. The Kingdom of Heaven. That's a fitting title. Well, already this is much better than the bad ending, which of course the bad ending is supposed to be freaking bad. Ugh. God, that bad ending just, it did not sit well at all. Then again, that's how bad endings are supposed to be. Whew. Well, we get the freaking throne of, I guess next episode we're going to be at the throne of God. And that's where Adam and Eve are going to be. It'll be fun trying to kill them. So God succumbed to madness. What a funny little thought. All the more reason that we could totally kill him. Anyway, I'm gonna be pissing off so many religious people. It's not even funny. Well, actually, it's freaking hilarious that I'm pissing off religious people. Well, I mean, extremely religious people, not the ones that are just kind of like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. The ones that are kind of the ones that are be like the ones that are in high school where you're sitting and you make one mention of a demon, then you get hit in the back of the head with the Bible. Totally not reliving past memories or anything. Anyway, that was a great episode. I can't wait to record more. And I'll see you guys in the next video. So thank you very much for watching and see you next time.